Ah. Good people, welcome. So what's good? What's good? What's happening? What's good? What's happening? My name is Joshua. For those who don't know me, for those who know me, you know who it is. It's your boy. But I've been getting a couple of questions. I've realized over the past couple of summers, around this time, I usually get these kind of questions. And so instead of having to send out or schedule calls, I decided to go ahead and prepare a video to make it easier. This is just general information. By no means I am not an expert in these things. All I am trying to relay is basically the information that I know based on my knowledge, current experience of what I've gone through. Information could vary, so again, I'm not an expert, but since I've gone through it, I kind of have an idea. But if you'd like a follow-up session, you could schedule a time and a place. Just feel free to message me. Again, I'm nowhere an expert, but my time is not free. So, as you say, I will give out free information. Any scheduled calls will be, will definitely not be free. It will be at a fee. And so, for now, let's go ahead and get started. You may be wondering, what is it do I have prepared? For those who don't know, I'm from Kenya. You know, gang represent. Happy Madaraka Day. I'm recording on Madaraka Day. But I grew up in Kenya, and then I managed to come to the US to study this side. And so my experience is a bit different, and I'm just trying to relay the process of coming from Kenya to study abroad, or specifically in the US to be more specific, because that's where that's where I studied. You can do a little background, check out my Instagram, check out my LinkedIn, check out my Facebook, whatever you want to do. But yeah, came from Kenya, studied in the US, went to Wisconsin, then came to Texas, graduated. Now I'm a working person. That's just a brief history. Now let's get straight to it, right? How do you get from applying, or how do you get from the first step to actually applying to the US, right? We'll have a second video about the whole process of acceptance and moving in, and that'll be a separate video. But for now, because this is in demand, this is the information I'm going to say. So let's get right to it. So when you're trying to study abroad, the first thing you want to do is research, right? Do your research. And when I said this, I said do your research because do not let assumptions or stereotypes build up your understanding of the place, especially if you have not left Kenya or whatever African country you're from. Again, this is for people who are outside of, who are Pan-African or who are Kenyan to be specific. Do your research, right? Research could be going to websites, watching videos, going to social media sites, interviewing people, getting to know basically the environment. But the question is, what are you basically researching? So to know, if you want to know where you want to go or what would be the best fit for you, the first thing you want to do is basically figure out, based on these 4 criteria. These are just my criteria. There could be other criteria out there, but these are just mine. So one of the criteria is the quality of education. What major or what course are you trying to do, right? And which universities have those strong suits? If you know what you want to do and that's what guides your education, then that's a very key point to look at. What are the top ranked universities, or which ones have good system that that can basically mold you towards that side. So 1, quality of education, right, and level of university. 2, what is the cost, right? And cost comes in 2 things. There's a cost and there's a scholarship, right? Do these people offer scholarships? 1, and post scholarship or before scholarship, how much does it cost? Without the scholarship, can you go there? And with the scholarship, can you still attend? So you have to also look at that. And then one big thing that many people don't talk about is the community, right? This is the community when it comes to on campus, living on campus, and it's also the community of the area, right? I'd call it either the African community or people who are close to you, because sometimes you don't start afresh. But I said that my freshman year, and I realized that may not be the best decision, because when coming to the US, you're going to be, it's a whole culture change. So you want to be able to be around people who can help you adapt or shift more smoothly, and be able to just thrive, because there's some things that people have already gone through that you can be able to learn from them and skip it. And then if you go to a whole new place, you're trying to relearn, basically learn what other people have learned. It's just slowing down how fast you can get to where you want to get to, right? And so community is a very big part of it. And lastly, number 4, the job prospects. This not just comes up with the university, but it also comes with the course you're trying to do. So the major, and also how good is that from that area? How diverse are the people from that university? Which companies do they go to, or rather, how likely or what conditions? In the US, there's a lot of restrictions, right? If you come to the US, most people know you do STEM to be able to like have a 1-year work permit with a 24-month extension. Because if you're not STEM, you're just going to end up being, 1 year, and then you either have to go back to school or move out. So think about the job prospects, or rather what you plan on doing with your career. That's a big thing to think about, right? Now, when you're doing your research, right, the first thing you want to do is have a list, right? You have a list of the following: 1, 3 top schools, like high achieving, like these are like a Hail Mary. If you get it, you drop everything and go in, right? Whether it's Ivy Leagues or it's one of those, Stanford and whatnot, those top achieving schools, those are the ones, this is assuming that, maybe you're an average student. It's not a bad thing, it's not a good thing, it's just what it is. We're not all top achievers. But you need to have those really high achieving that you can't think you can get, whether it's MIT or it's Oxford, whatever it is, high achieving ones. And then there's the achievable ones. This basically comes up with like, the acceptance rate and the requirements. Can you meet them? There's acceptance rate, match something that's achievable for you. And so you look at it and you pick like top 3 achievable, and then you can pick a bunch of safe schools, the ones that there's no way they cannot accept you, And so once you have your list, do your comparisons, because again, when you're applying, you have to pay for it. Nothing about this process is going to be cheap or free, because remember, every application has its own fee, and it usually ranges from like $65 to $85 depending on what you're applying to. Now, of course, you can get waivers, but again, that's very dependent on the situation. You'd have to research about how to get a waiver. Personally, I got it because of certain because of the environment I was in, and it varies from person to person. Now, once you have your your list of schools, I usually have 10 schools and I kind of shortlist it, but for me I applied to all 10 simply because. But have your list of schools and just shortlist that. See which ones now, based on the 4 things you're researching about: the cost, the community, the job prospects. Shortlist them. Having 5 to 6 is more than enough. Having 3 is gambling, knowing that this is what you have, for sure. So don't make it too much, because again, it's an amount of work you also have to put in, and that's money. And also, you don't want too little that your probability also decreases so much after putting on all that effort. Now, once you shortlist this thing, come to the next step. You need to now look at the requirements, right? Look at the requirements and list out a calendar, right, with all the dates. Now, you have to be conscious of all possible dates, because everything is timely. You miss something by a day, you miss something by something, that's it. You don't want to be in a position whereby you didn't get an opportunity simply because you didn't meet a deadline. That's the worst. That's setting yourself up for failure, right? And so you need to know what the requirements are, and not just that, but you need to understand what resources, right, what resources you can get for each requirement, and give yourself separate deadlines. Now, the hard deadlines, which are the ones given to you by the system or by the people, and then there's your own deadlines, which you give yourself. You give yourself to basically cushion those deadlines, so that even if you don't meet your deadline, you still have a bit of time to recover and meet that second deadline, right? Now, you also need to keep note of scholarship deadlines. I think this is something that not many people are aware of, but the earlier you apply, the more chances you have to basically have access to way more scholarships. Each school has different ones. There's presidential scholarships, like in University of Texas at Arlington, whereby they basically look at your SAT and ranking in your school, and they basically look at it in this form. They basically have the requirements. You'd have to check that on the website. I don't want to go get into that because that's too specific. But they have a separate deadline from the normal regular admission deadline, from the normal other sorts of, deadlines. Now, some of the requirements that you'd have to look out for are things like doing TOEFL, the English exam. Some people don't have to do it. If you can prove that you were taught, or your language of instruction was in English, you can basically get a waiver. You'll have to talk to a school. That's a one-on-one basis. But most of the time, or other people who may, if you went to public school in Kenya, you may have to do the TOEFL. If you find a way to be exempt from a certain school, you can be exempt, because there's a way in which ambassadors have proven that Kenyans don't need to take those exams. You just have to talk to the school about it. Now, the other thing would be to look at the SAT, the SAT, or the ACT. Now, this is not necessarily a requirement for a lot of schools because of COVID, and also some schools just don't really care about it. It doesn't really reflect anything. But for those who do, you have to check the deadlines or the testing days for these things. Most of the time, I'd suggest do it twice, because the first time would be at least to have a feel of the thing, and the second time would be to try and improve on those scores. So I usually suggest that people do at least, twice. Just, if you did well the first time, you can even do better, to give you different distinction when it comes to scholarships, and also when it comes to scholarships, because a lot of times getting SATs above a certain amount gives you a scholarship, depending on what scholarship you're talking about. But besides the SAT and ACT, those testings, you also need to look at recommendations. Most if not all, usually need recommendations, right? Alright, let's resume to our viewer. So, we're talking about recommendations, right? So, besides the testing, we look at recommendations. When it comes to recommendations, usually you need a professional recommendation, and this usually requires either a professional, either if you've been working, somebody from your workplace, or, college professors. Now, again, this may vary between masters and bachelors, but technically you need, I would say, 3 to be safe. Usually you only need 2, but 3 to be safe. Because if 2 are there, maybe you don't need the last third one. But always have a list of 3 people to be safe, 4 just in case. That's just, being over the top. But as long as you have like some teachers, hopefully teachers who are in the same industry that you're trying to get into. Industries are the wrong word choice, but let's say within the same course. So for example, if you're doing engineering, a teacher who is the maths or science would be great. So yeah, pick your recommenders wisely. Somebody who actually knows how to word certain things, right? Because again, it's their word. You technically are not allowed to look at what they say, so you have to be able to trust them to be able to word that perfectly. That's, technically, legally, you're not allowed to see it. But on the offhand, like, again, I'm not an expert. Other people prefer that, you tell them what you need to be written, and they basically kind of guide it through. You can talk to them, tell them what's required. If your person is too lazy and, you just want to write and then have them sign it off, that's up to you. Again, I'm not recommending this, I'm just saying that's what other people may do. Legally, again, whoever, if you decide to sue me, that's up to you. But yeah, that could be an option, right? But yeah, once you get your recommenders, now you can worry about your personal requirements, and this comes down to personal statement and essays. Now, these take time to get right. personal statements are one of the hardest things to get right, because it's not your typical essay. It's not something you can just wake up one morning and do. You will need to get a professional help, somebody who's done this before, somebody who has an idea of what good personal statements look like, and just get their opinion. And you need somebody who either gone through it before, or just get their opinion and see how it is, because it's, I believe it should be like 500 words. If I'm not wrong, again, I could be wrong, could be not, haven't really rechecked, because the last time I did this was back in 2016, or rather 2015, 2016, and so it could have changed, couldn't have. But personal statements is something, it's your marketing pitch, it's your pitch, your personal pitch without your face or anything. So what has to be said has to be something in addition to what they already know. You don't want to just repeat something that's going to be on there, right? But then again, that's getting into details. So know your recommenders, know the testing dates, know what prompts you want to do, and practice these things. Get help. Who can you get help with? And you need to, it should be weeks, not even weeks, months, you just practicing to make sure you get your personal statements right. Once you get the groove of it and you get an okay, boom, go ahead and start applying. Once you get other requirements done, of course. And then lastly, some schools require essays, right? And so that's another thing to look at. What essays do you want to answer, and how good are you at answering those essays? Again, it's all about saying it so well within the word requirement in such a way that they want to know more. Like, you pass on what needs to be passed on, but at the same time it's like you want them to know more, you know, that kind of thing. But then again, this requires, again, a professional help, somebody who knows what they're talking about, which you can, again, coincide with somebody to be able to get this kind of knowledge, right? Some schools don't necessarily need all this. Something like a community college, again, I'll talk about the different routes of what you could possibly look into. But they're the example of the requirements. Other schools may need additional things. Again, transcripts could be something that you have to make sure you get. Actually, yeah, transcripts is something definitely you want to make sure you have ahead of time. Whether it's high school transcripts, college transcripts, wherever you're coming from, make sure you have these things as early as possible, so that it's not like you're waiting for them to do. Because some processes, if you're in African countries, those things take long, because you know processes are not really a strong suit for, you know, especially Kenya. And so if you depend on others, give them different deadlines. So if you're hunting down for your transcripts, start as early as possible, as early as July, August, because those things take time, and there's all those excuses, right? Systems are down, somebody needs to sign it off, they can't find him, excuse. So you need to start early. If you can get connections to get them done, get them done. Now, here's the other big thing. There are usually 3 sets of kind of applications. There's the early decision, which is if you get accepted here, you will go regardless of the situation, unless of course certain circumstances that they say you'll definitely go if you can afford it. Early action is basically saying you're not like my drop everything decision, but I'm just applying early to get it done out of the way. I'm this interested in you, you know. And then there's the regular admission, which is just, you know, usually towards the end of towards mid-March, end of March or April. Early action and early decision take as early as end of October, November-ish kind of dates. You'll have to, again, make sure you get the dates right, because some may vary between October, November, December, and then regular is usually towards after January. This varies on location, whether it's US, Canada, the UK, Switzerland, Australia. They all vary from country to country, location to location. And so once you figure out your deadlines and figure out all these things, start practicing early. Whether it's the test, whether it is the essays, whether it's personal statements, getting these things done early, it could be a full-time job, right? So making sure you have the right resources, making sure you have the right timings, those are the keys to success. Now, when you're looking at the routes of how you could go, if you come to the US specifically, which most people who are making this for are, the 2 options. You either want to go the traditional route where you go straight into a bachelor's program and then, you know, go straight, graduate, do your work, you know, or master's and graduate. That's up to you. Alternative is, if you're not sure what you want to do, or if you want to start from a low cost side, you could pick a state, right? Think of the school that you want to transfer to, or the one that you want to go, what 4-year college you want to graduate from, and then pick a community college in that state. Now, when I say pick a community college in that state, this is because certain classes may transfer within certain states. Within Texas, there's some that are easily transferable. Now, if you're moving from state to a different state, some of those classes you may have to retake them again, you may not, it'll just be confusing. For example, history. Like, you have to do American history and local history, and those whole things. If you take community college, they're cheap, easy to do, and they're relatable. Like, you can easily transfer them. It saves you money, saves you time. Okay, things. So you can pick a community college, have an idea, what it means to transfer. If you transfer, how much scholarship can you get to a different school? For example, coming to UTA or UT systems, if you transfer with a GPA of 4.0, you get around 3,000, 4,000 in addition to paying in-state. Depending on, it usually varies actually. Let me not put a dollar value, but it usually varies depending on 3.2 or 3.25 going up. There's usually different stages of what transfer scholarships you'd get. So you'd have to do your research to figure out, with the scholarship I'm going to get, can I still afford going to that school? Can I be able to pay off out of the pocket? Because a lot of times, US schools, unless you go to an Ivy League or unless you have a full ride, you probably will have to pay out of pocket, right? Now, they usually, if you're coming straight from high school, there's usually like some freshman specific, freshman year specific scholarships that can be able to basically give you a full ride. For example, presidential scholarships, like at UTA, you'd have to check that. There's usually some that are specific to incoming first incoming freshmen. Now, if you've already been to college, and let's say you're doing masters, that's a whole different thing. I personally haven't done masters, but that would be, you'd have to look at those requirements. Again, for masters, it would be GRE, LSATs, GMATs, depending on what exactly you want to do, right? You'll have to look at those requirements. But if you're looking at bachelors, you'd have to think about, then go straight to 4-year, can you afford it? Do you have a great support system? Because that first year, there are chances that you'll make some very bad decisions unless you have somebody supporting you, because that's a whole talk for another day. But once you have that, and you decide whether you want to go to 4-year or community college could be a safe school. If you don't get to your 4-year college, your full ride, you can go to a community college, start off from there, transfer, and then graduate. 2 years, and you're out, right? And so, a lot of times you might have to talk to people, to the schools you're thinking about going to, because certain assumptions may not work going into a foreign country. So, I feel like those are the big key questions that may come up for the whole process. Now, if there are any specific questions you may have, feel free to DM me. My contacts will be in the bio. You can email me. We can talk about it. And again, if I have a high volume to prioritize yourself, again, it may not be free. First consultation may be free, but it's limited to like 15 to 20 minutes. After that, again, any follow-ups will be at a certain fee. But besides that, yeah, thank you for listening, thank you for watching. Hopefully this helps and helps you clarify. I will have a collated document that I'll be able to send out. If you reach out to me, I can send that out to make it easier to kind of summarize it. I'll have the description to summarize everything. Other than that, thank you for listening, thank you for coming to my channel, and boom, stay tuned for more content similar or different to this. Yo.